Hello. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about the book Faith and the Founders of the American Republic, specifically Chapter 13, Isaac Backus and John Leland, Baptist Contributions to Religious Liberty in the Founding Era. Specifically in this book, we see the author Joe L. Coker discussed in Chapter 13 both ministers and their contributions to religious liberty in the founding era. We also hear about Thomas Jefferson and his contributions and decisions regarding separation of church and the state, as well as both ministers Backus and Leland. They were Baptist ministers who were also involved in politics in different ways, and we also see more about denominational growth throughout that period as well. You may be familiar with the gift of a massive cheese wheel that was given to Thomas Jefferson. This was gifted to him by Minister John Leland on behalf of the Baptist population in Cheshire, Massachusetts during 1802. This was because letters were sent to Jefferson to advocate for more separation of church and the state, with more religious rights for Baptists and Protestants. The cheese wheel, again, it was a gift to him. And this was an appreciation after he had specifically written a letter to the Baptists of Danbury, Connecticut, after his comment on the First Amendment and his view on keeping a healthy division between church and state. Chapter 13 goes into more detail about who the two ministers are. Both are Baptist ministers from the state of Massachusetts, and both, again, heavily advocated for separation of church and state, so that way the government could not have a say in how people worship and what they worshiped for. Isaac Backus and John Leland, again, both being of the Baptist faith, had different ways that a separate Baptist and a regular Baptist would preach or worship, but again, theologically, they are very similar. They had a little bit of a difference in the approach regarding Calvinism, and they both had a difference in how they started out preaching as well. The Great Awakening specifically influenced John Leland's preaching, whereas Backus was more traditional in his approach. And because of this, Leland became more popular and would preach across revivals among the states. A clear and steady channel, Isaac Backus and the Limits of Liberty, is a journal article written by Peter J. Richards. Richards focuses on discussing Backus and his philosophical notions on the ideas of liberty, freedom through salvation, and liberty according to the states. Richard writes that Backus believed that the posture of the soul was in direct correlation to God and one's relationship with their community and government. Backus also spoke about the concept of liberty regarding humanity as a whole, not just in the Christian perspective. And Backus also believed that the three things that bonded mankind was liberty, obedience, and then duty. The Baptist Heritage is a book written by Leon Macbeth. He focuses in the book on John Leland, who became the mouthpiece of the South and advocated for religious liberty in the southern states. He also served on the General Committee of Virginia. He was very involved in politics as well, and he wrote The Rights of Conscience Inalienable, which very much lined up with the core values of the Declaration of Independence. He also believed that spiritual freedom in turn would produce spiritual fruitfulness in a Christian, and his evangelical popularity in Virginia allowed him to preach thousands of sermons and also baptize 1,278 new Christians in the state alone. He also aligned his beliefs in politics with the Jeffersonian politics of, again, keeping church and state separate so that way, again, the state would not have a greater say in what Christians did or did not do. My closing thoughts are this. The Baptists sought freedom for religion as opposed to freedom from religion. They wanted to be able to worship as they chose. The historiography that I found is very similar across the board between the three authors. And then Jefferson saw that he had a specific audience of Baptists that looked to him for guidance and assistance when it came to making sure that church and state stayed separate. And then ministers like Backus and Leland both were influential in society and in political environments and advocated for the religious liberties of their denominations and others.